On the 26th of December, 1900, a man climbed 160 steps carved into the rock of a tiny island lashed by the Atlantic. He climbed alone. His name was Joseph Moore. He pushed open the lighthouse door and found a kitchen frozen in time. The clock had stopped. The table was half set. A chair lay overturned, and there was not a single soul. 3 men lived inside that lighthouse. All 3 had vanished. What happened to the 3 keepers of the Flannan Isles? And a far more unsettling question: if they really died in an accident, why does the scene they left behind not quite fit that explanation? Let's take this step by step, because the closer you get to the proven facts, the stranger it all becomes. The Flannan Isles are a scatter of desolate rocks in the North Atlantic, off the west coast of Scotland, in the Outer Hebrides. So hostile that sailors called them the Seven Hunters. There, on the islet of Eilean Mor, a new lighthouse had been raised. Built barely a year earlier, in 1899, it was solid and strong, and it survived the storm of 1900. Yet somehow, the 3 keepers did not. All 3 were skilled men, trusted men. The principal keeper was James Duckett. The second assistant was Thomas Marshall. And Donald MacArthur was the occasional keeper, standing in for first assistant William Ross, who was off sick. Duckett, from Arbroath, was 43 years old, with more than 20 years of experience as a keeper. These were not novices, they were not reckless. And that is the first piece that doesn't fit. Let's go back a few days. The first sign that something was wrong came not from land, but from the sea. On the 15th of December 1900, the steamer Arctur, sailing from Philadelphia to the Scottish port of Leith, noted in its logbook that the Flannan Isles light was not lit. A dark lighthouse on a black night over one of the most dangerous stretches of sea in Europe. It was exactly what must never happen. And here comes the first stroke of bad luck. That report was slow to arrive. The alert didn't reach the Northern Lighthouse Board until the disappearance had already been discovered. When the relief was finally arranged, the sea had other plans. The relief vessel Hesperus tried to reach the island on the 20th of December, but bad weather stopped it. It only managed to get there around noon on the 26th. 11 days. 11 days in which no one knew what was happening on that islet. And when they finally arrived, the silence was worse than any storm. The ship's captain, Jim Harvey, sounded the horn and fired a flare, hoping to alert the keepers. There was no response, no flag, no man coming down to the landing to help with the maneuver as custom demanded. Only rock, wind, and that dark lighthouse staring down at them. Then Joseph Moore stepped ashore, and this is where the story turns cold. Moore found the entrance gate and the main door of the compound shut. He climbed the 160 steps to the lighthouse and discovered that the beds were unmade. The kitchen clock had stopped, the table was set for a meal no one had touched, and a chair lay overturned. Hold that image. The closed door, the fallen chair, the stopped clock. The only sign of life was a canary in its cage, in the kitchen. Moore ran back down with the news. He later returned to the island with 3 other men. Mr. MacDonald, the boymaster on board, and sailors Lamont and Campbell, who volunteered to stay and keep the light burning. They searched the whole islet, inch by inch. And what they found was crystal clear and baffling at the same time. The men combed every corner of the island for clues about the keeper's fate. They found everything intact at the east landing, but the west landing showed considerable damage from recent storms. And we are not talking about ordinary mess here. We are talking about colossal force. A box positioned some 33 meters above sea level had been smashed open, its contents scattered. The iron railings were bent, the iron rail track beside the path had been torn from its concrete, and a rock weighing more than a ton had been moved. And high on the cliff, more than 60 meters above the sea, the water had ripped away turf up to 10 meters from the edge. Think about that for a second. The sea had risen so high it tore grass loose at 60 meters up. That is not a normal wave. That is the Atlantic baring its teeth. With that evidence on the table, the man tasked with the official answer arrived, and he was no ordinary bureaucrat. On the 29th of December, 1900, Robert Muirhead, superintendent of the Northern Lighthouse Board, arrived to lead the official investigation. Muirhead had personally recruited the three missing men and knew them in person. In other words, he came looking for his own men. His conclusion was sober, practical, no ghosts. He became convinced the men had been on duty until midday on Saturday the 15th of December and had gone down to secure the box that held the mooring and landing ropes. His reconstruction is this. Two of the keepers, Ducat and Marshall, went down to the west landing to protect the equipment during the storm. And then he reconstructed the most human, most terrible detail. He examined the clothing left in the lighthouse and concluded that Ducat and Marshall had gone down to the west landing, and that MacArthur, the occasional keeper, had left the lighthouse in the driving rain in his shirt sleeves. In his shirt sleeves. No oilskin, a man who, according to this theory, saw his companions in trouble and ran out to help without stopping to grab his coat. And a giant wave took all three. It's a coherent explanation. It fits the damage. It fits the fact that no bodies were ever recovered, which is not unusual in those conditions, because the Atlantic around the Flannans is deep and violent. Case closed then. Or is it? Because there's one detail that the lighthouse's own protocol turns into a problem. And it's the detail that, more than a century later, still keeps people awake at night. Lighthouse regulations normally required that at least one man remain inside at all times. So why would all three leave the lighthouse together in bad weather? And there's something even stranger. Remember what Mor found, the compound gate and the doors shut. If MacArthur bolted out, desperate, to save two companions who were drowning, why would he stop to carefully close the inner doors, the outer door and the compound gate behind him? That small, orderly gesture, in the middle of panic, is the crack through which a century of theories has crept. And here I have to be honest with you, because on this channel the facts come first. You've probably heard of a chilling diary, entries where the keepers described a supernatural storm, where one wept, another prayed, and all three ended up praying together. It's a magnetic story. It is also almost certainly false. There is no evidence those entries ever existed, as journalist Mike Dash discovered after his own investigation. No proof of those notes has ever surfaced. The official reports of the time show the last logbook entry was made on the 13th of December, with small weather notes on the morning of the 15th. Barometer and wind direction. No prayers. The rest was added by legend, fueled in 1912 by a famous poem and by sensationalist magazines. And even discarding the fake diary, the sea serpents and the ghost ships, the logical gap remains. Three experienced men, a lighthouse locked from within, and the sea. Muirhead reasoned the wind could not have been the cause, because its direction would have pushed the men toward the island, not out to sea. And yet out to sea is exactly where they vanished forever. The Flannan Isles lighthouse kept working. In 1971, it was automated, ending the need for a permanent human presence. Today, the island is uninhabited. And in the village of Brestcleet, on the Isle of Lewis, where the keepers' families lived, the community raised a monument to the three men. The most likely explanation is still Muirhead's. A monstrous wave that swallowed three men doing their duty. But the honest truth is that no one saw it. No one survived to tell it. And that door, closed so carefully in the middle of chaos, is a small detail the sea will never explain to us. A stopped clock, an overturned chair, and three names the Atlantic carried off without leaving a single answer.